The Frivolous Dreams Podcast with Kyle Rogers. Let's think big. Let's think stupid. Yeah, let's be frivolous. Get up, bring it on, bring it up, bring it up, bring it on. Pick your numbers, then open your packs. Cross your fingers, then declare a tax. Kyle ripped off Doug Benson. Doug loves movies. Kyle loves magic. The Gathering. This is not the Kyle loves magic. The Gathering. This is the Frivolous Dreams Podcast with Kyle Rogers.
Welcome to Frivolous Dreams.
Thank you.
So, you know James.
I do.
We refer to him off camera as number one fan because he seems to be, my number one follower, and I appreciate that. Lately, he's been turning into my agent, I guess.
Yeah, your promoter.
Yeah, he's put me in touch with the last two guests, you and then, the library guy.
Dan?
Dan. But, so I appreciate him. But welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
Did you do any research on it?
No, I have not. I'm sorry. I am incredibly crazy busy doing the newspaper and all my old extracurriculars. So,
what do you mean the newspaper? You work at the
I'm the
Eagle?
editor. Yeah, I'm the editor of the
Okay.
Eagle. And I also am an author that's promoting a new book that just came out with an updated edition. And I'm also a YouTube channel host every day. So I just poke my head out every once in a while to...
See, James didn't give me any of this background. He said that you were looking to start your own podcast.
Yeah, no, I already started it. It's through Fan Arch. I didn't start it. They started, and they had me be their host. And
Okay.
so it's really picking up, honestly. I've been pushing it a lot. I have a lot of, Facebook reach or whatever. I put it out to a lot of different channels and different Facebook groups. Plus, I think they're doing a lot of promotion themselves. So that the views are really coming in every day. So that's good.
Nice. And what is that?
It's called Red Wings Daily. Basically, I'm a sports author, and one of my favorite teams in all of sports is the Detroit Red Wings of the NHL. And when I was talking to this Fan Arch, this producer, this the streamer, they said, well, if you were going to do a show on a team, like who would you pick? And I said, well, because I'm also a fan of the Yankees. I'm a fan of different things, but I'd have to, and the Vegas Golden Knights. But I thought about it, and I was like, well, I'm a really, really big fan of the Red Wings, and I really am into them a lot more than I am these days compared to the Yankees. And said, well, I guess the Red Wings. He says, well, we don't have a Red Wings show. And I was like, great, throw me on it. Let's do it.
So is that like a national network or something like that?
I don't think it's a national network. I think they stream a lot of different sports content.
Okay.
And I just have a show on it. I don't know if I'm one of their most popular, but like it has been growing in popularity as it's come along, and
Nice.
The subscribers are starting to really come in a lot more. At first, it was a grassroots campaign for me, just trying to get everybody, all my Facebook friends and my inner circle, sending texts out, things like that, over exploding my cell phone to try to get somebody to do it. And it got enough of a push off of the dock, but now it's starting to like build its own momentum as the views come in, and outside subscribers who aren't on my contact list in my cell phone, those are starting to come in too now.
Nice. The snowball is rolling.
Let's hope.
So how did you end up becoming a Red Wings fan?
Well, I grew up in Las Vegas, and when you grew up in Vegas, now you go to Vegas and now they have an NFL team, they have an NHL team, they got a Major League Baseball team on the way, and they're in talks to try to get an NBA team here or there. And so you kind of hitch your wagon, as a kid growing up 30 years ago when there's no teams on the high level. We had semi-pro teams and minor league teams, stuff like that. So you hitch your wagon to a different team. And I really love the Red Wings logo. I think it's the best logo in all the major sports. And it's just I've never turned back from there. And a lot of people call me a bandwagoner because, around the time I started becoming a fan of them, well, I was a young kid, but they started their string of making the playoffs, winning Stanley Cups eventually, things like that. And so they're always thinking of me as a bandwagoner. I don't really see it that way because they haven't really been good the last 10 years, and I still love them. So
I got on. I'm not getting off.
that's right.
It doesn't matter when I got on.
Yeah.
I'm not getting off. But
Yeah, exactly.
when I've never, like, up until a very short stint, I did not I was not a hockey guy. Like, I went to a couple games as a kid where it was like, hanging out with the Boy Scouts, and it was more about being with friends than it was about the fact that we were at a hockey game. And then I watched a soccer match. The first soccer match I ever watched was USA versus Japan in the semifinals, ladies World Cup or something like that. And it was a super important game that I just happened to decide to watch. And then somebody said, if you enjoyed that, you'd probably like hockey. And it was like, oh yeah, that is also good. I'm not the type of person to go out of my way to watch a game, but if I catch it, it's nice, unless it's the Broncos. If it's the Broncos, then we're gonna lose.
We're right there with you there. Yeah, I don't even like the NFL anymore. I was a diehard Steelers fan for a long time, but I can't even stand the NFL. Don't even tune into it. Same with the NBA. To me, it's an eternal round right now because baseball and hockey are my two favorite sports, and they basically have alternating seasons. So as soon as one's getting done and wrapping up, the other one's starting up, and vice versa. So, I'm sitting through the doldrums of not having baseball right now, but got plenty of hockey going on.
I'm going to break the fourth wall a little bit.
Go for it.
Right now, as we speak, my dad and brother at a UMass basketball game.
Oh, nice.
So, and he called me yesterday to say he finally figured out how to use Spotify so he can listen to these episodes. So with that said, this one's to you, Dad. Up until the last 5 minutes of the game, basketball still doesn't matter. It's only the last 5 minutes that matter.
Right. That's right.
We got into it wasn't like an argument, but it was like a debate on what we should be watching, because he was watching a basketball game in the first half of a college game, and I was trying to watch a UFC fight, and it's like there's a little bit of a difference here. Like, this is the first half that doesn't matter.
Right.
The next 0.4 of a second could matter in this fight. But yeah.
That's another thing about hockey is hockey is a good chess match kind of sport. And, you have very rare occasions where a team just gets blown out right out of the first few minutes, and it's just over. But most of the time, any team is in it up until those last few minutes.
Yeah, because each, with soccer, and I'm a super fan, I watch every single game with a capital S on the sarcasm. But, I see, hockey as the same way, where it's like a game could end 1-0. As opposed to basketball, where it's like it could be 120 or it could be 90, but it's definitely not going to be 7.
I'm a defensive-minded person, so I enjoy and I appreciate the Golden State Warriors for all that they've brought to the NBA. But when I see these scores at 143 to 135, it just totally takes it away from me. I always like the defensive-minded teams, the Detroit Pistons of the 2004. And obviously some of the teams that have come along since then. San Antonio Spurs, they were never my favorite team, but I appreciated their way to just come to strangulate you and really just lock it down and rend you helpless and motionless.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on the defense. I also like breaking the meta. Do you ever hear that term?
Mm-mm.
So to try to use a hockey term or a hockey example, which I may get wrong because I'm not a huge hockey follower, but if you're down, say 3-0 in the third period, sometimes you take the goalie out and try to go harder offense. My idea, an extreme example of breaking the meta would be to go, well, what if we instead take the goalie out in the first period and try to get a lead and then play defense?
Right.
It's like I like
to
to try to think outside the box,
right.
which gets me in trouble at work a lot.
Yeah.
But that'll happen. It happens every day. Okay. So You said you grew up in Vegas. Up until last year, I've never been there. First time there. When you say grew up, are we talking formative, like early childhood?
Yeah, my whole
teenage,
life.
Whole life?
My whole life up until about 42, and then we
Okay.
traveled the country in an RV. I settled down in Arizona. We lived there for about 3 years, and we've been here up here in Washington for almost a year now.
Now we're speaking my language. You traveled in an RV the whole country.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear that story.
Well, it depends on the audience. When you're in Vegas, it's 2 million people. So obviously during COVID, there's a lockdown and really there's not much you can do. Being here, I'm sure in COVID versus being in Las Vegas in COVID are two different worlds. You got 600 people here, and it's not an everyday thing where you see more than 10 people gathered. They were basically telling us you can't have a gathering of more than 10 people. And everywhere we were going, they were telling us to wear a mask, telling us we can't do this. This business is essential. This business is not essential. You got people building the Raiders stadium. That's an essential business, while there's a lot of small startup groups and businesses that were considered non-essential and losing their livelihoods. Yet you're telling me I can't have more than 10 people in a gathering, but you're going to spend all this time and money building a stadium, completing a stadium that's going to seat 65,000 plus another 10 to 15,000 people throughout all the concourses and suites and all that. So that is a priority, apparently. Thought just enough of this nonsense. I can't stand living like this. So we're like, let's sell our house and let's see what we can do. The world's kind of acting like a really crazy, a lot of lunacy going around. So we traveled around in an RV. We traveled down the south. There's not a lot of rules and a lot of restrictions a lot of times in the south, except for in the big cities. So a lot of times we avoided the cities and only went into them when we were, shopping or something like that. And we went by way of starting in Arizona, going to New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and then made our way back up through Georgia, Tennessee, stayed in Missouri for a couple of months. Returned back westward, Utah, Vegas for returning for just a little spot, and then settled back down into Arizona. So it was fun. My daughter was 9 at the time, so she really got to be homeschooled and kind of see the country. Some of the most amazing, beautiful areas we went to. Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico is one of the most amazing places you'll ever visit. We got to see a lot of beautiful beaches. A lot of people don't realize, but Alabama has some gorgeous oceanfront property there on the Gulf Shores, and the sand is white and the water is clear and it's beautiful
And warm.
and Florida. Florida can be beautiful, but I think that's the most miserable I was weather-wise during that humidity. And then Tennessee.
That's why I left Massachusetts.
That's right. So I can't say enough about Tennessee. Until I came up here to the Pacific Northwest, I thought that Tennessee was the most beautiful part of the country. But I have to say this beats Tennessee, albeit by a narrow margin. But yeah.
So did you end up here because you just were traveling through and went, oh, never mind, we're gonna stay?
No, because we stopped our whole RV traveling in Arizona, and we started renting a house in a little town called Wickenburg. So we were there for about 3 years. But then we had our eyes and hearts kind of set here towards the Pacific Northwest. So I started reaching out to different newspapers all across Oregon and Washington, and landed on a couple. And the Waukegan County Eagle was the one that ended up being the one we chose and went forward with. So we moved up here.
So we got a similar kind of background origin story. I was working in Massachusetts, living in a camper, a homemade, significantly probably less decent camper. And I realized that when it snows, even though I have a Jeep, it's going to make things very difficult. So I applied for every promotion in the entire country, and that's how I ended up here. So yeah, kind of similar. What do you think?
Oh, I love it up here. I mean, it's even right now when everything's getting flooded in some of these lower parts, it's still beautiful up here. I still wouldn't trade this for anything, especially living back in Wickenburg. Wickenburg is going from Las Vegas to Wickenburg is going from a city with about 2.5 million people in the valley to a town of about 7,000, 9,000 in Wickenburg. But now we're in a town of 600 without even a stoplight. At least there was 2 stoplights in Wickenburg. There's only one. or 3 stoplights. No, they actually, no, 2. Correction, 2, because they took one of them out to put a roundabout in. And anybody who has ever, gets on social media can see what roundabouts can cause, especially on a dangerous highway, and the stupidity that arises out of them. I haven't seen so many of them here up in Washington, but I know they're still around, but they're everywhere in Arizona.
Meanwhile, I'm over here going, man, where Washington Way meets that bridge there, that'd be a great spot for a roundabout. There's a whole bunch of churches, and I think it's Washington Way and Nichols maybe, where it's chaos. Too many lights.
Too many,
but,
yeah.
But yeah, I went a good 2 years without seeing a stoplight. It was kind of nice, but now I work in Longview, so I have to see them all the time.
Yeah, I've been in Seattle a couple of times in the last few weeks to do interviews for the hockey book up at the arena where the Kraken play. And so going from here to Seattle, I drove out to Jimi Hendrix's grave on Saturday, and I was seeing all the traffic coming back in, and I was giving myself I felt like I was giving myself ample time, and I was starting to panic as I was driving out of the city over to the cemetery, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not want to do this. I knew that all my responsibilities were waiting for me to come back, but I thought, if I have to be in this, I don't know, is this really even worth it? But luckily, when you come back from Renton and come back from Jimi Hendrix's cemetery, you don't have to bring the 5 back like I was thinking. You actually can take the 90 west back into Seattle. So it didn't end up being too bad, and I wasn't really held up too much traffic-wise. But still, driving around Portland, driving around Seattle, it's a headache. You figure you'd be used to it living in Vegas all your life, and I am, but I went away from that crap for a little bit. So going back to it is not necessarily my cup of tea.
Yeah, there's 2 different types of fun. There's the I'm having fun right now, and then there's the when I think about this later, I'll think about it how it was fun, but not right now.
Right.
Like, when you're camping in the rain,
Yeah.
it's like, this will be fun when I think about it later, but
Yeah,
it would be nice to stop raining. But do you miss the road?
I do. I want to go back on the road, not necessarily a year at a time, but there's other places. I want to go see the upper Midwest a little bit more. I want to see New England, obviously where you hung around. I'd like to see some of those areas, and maybe even dip into Boston to check out Fenway Park just for a minute, and then get the hell right out of Boston again. So,
if you are interested, I could give you some waypoints. Like, I could tell you where the first recipient of the equivalent of the Medal of Honor is. He got it from George Washington before the Medal of Honor was labeled as such, but the equivalent of it. I know where his tombstone is.
Cool.
I like cemeteries. There's not a lot of them out here.
Yeah, I can imagine this cemeteries here are treated a little bit like cemeteries in Louisiana. So.
What's that?
Got to have them a little bit above ground if you really want to not see bodies washed up the river. But I haven't seen any of those. But when you drive around Louisiana, they are below sea level in a lot of places. And so they have to have their cemeteries and mausoleums and things like that above ground.
It's one of those things that I never really thought about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not as into cemeteries as you might think me just leading off saying, I went to Jimi Hendrix's grave. But it's Jimi Hendrix. I'm a musician. Right. I played the drums for about 37 years now, and game is game as I go. And as far as musicians, I met Victor Wooten of the Bell Fleck and the Flecktones, and he's probably one of the greatest bassists there ever was. And I'm a drummer, but meeting a bassist like that is one of those experiences I wasn't going to pass up.
Right. Music is one of those things where it's a whole nother language, and if you know it, you don't necessarily have to speak the same dialect, but you can still respect it.
Yeah.
The first instrument I tried to learn was drums, and it did not go well. I am a one note at a time person. As soon as you get into chords or this hand does this and that foot, no, we're done. Can't do that. But
yeah, I think that was my advantage is learning to play drums, is I had to force myself as a young kid to write left-handed and be more of a left-handed in most of my stuff because I broke my right arm. And so starting with you realize the left, it was my strong hand, but it's not the most convenient hand when you're playing drums and you're playing drum sets. So I started to learn the right hand and stuff. And so now I, became an ambidextrous drummer, and talking to other drummers, they're like, oh, that's awesome. Because it's just a way to change it up and to be fluid. Carter Beaufort, who's the drummer of the Dave Matthews Band, he is a well-known ambidextrous drummer, and you see almost like what's like effortless way he does things, and it's because of that. I'm not anywhere near his skill level, but when you get to be ambidextrous and stuff like that, it is a little bit of effortless as far as the reaching and everything like that, and being able to keep your time on a crash cymbal and do something else on the tom. That really comes into play.
See, it's moments like this I wish I was way better with names, because I really want to make a monodextrous joke about, is it
Rick Allen, the drummer from Def Leppard?
Is he the one that had the one arm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rick Allen.
Yeah. But I'm not good with, like, when it comes to I'm a very what did you do and how did you do it, and less about who your name was and what year it was.
Right.
Not interested in that. Like math, geometry, yes. Dates, like it was only just like maybe 9 or 10 months ago where somebody pointed out that like Caesar was before Jesus, and it was like, what? Oh, okay, yeah, that is true, but my brain had never even contemplated that they were on the same timeline.
Right.
Never mind, like which order of operations it was, but
right.
So let's take a step into my podcast territory. Firstly, this is the guest's pad, so you can feel free to put your mark on there. Sorry, I got a little wet in the rain, so they're a little discolored. But in order to try to pay my guests, because I can't afford anything, everyone gets one ticket. So pick one for yourself, and then pick one for myself.
For yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this one is for me, and then I'll pick this one for the producer, and then this one's the table one. All right, so these are technically from Monday, so we could or could not, like, it's already determined if one of us is a millionaire, but I haven't looked it up because that's less exciting. So the big question of the podcast is, if you won an absurd amount of money, we're talking like, imagine getting paid $5,000 every day for the rest of your life. Every single day you get $5,000. You pay off, all of your bills, you buy a house or pay off a house or get rid of a house, whatever, all of that's done. The kids' college is paid for, et cetera, et cetera. That's all done. Now you live life for 10 years. Now you're bored and you still have way too much money. How do you waste it?
I mean, if I waste it, I probably would want to waste it with people I love. Like maybe they may resent me for doing it and be like, oh, whatever, but they may also love me for doing it, but like fly them out to hang out or do whatever and live it up for a weekend or something like that, and just show them. I don't know. I think I've had plenty of experiences where, a buddy has taken me and said, hey, he's one of my best friends, but for my 40th birthday, going into it, I said, hey, let's, let me fly in. Let's drive over to Oakland, catch a game, and we'll spend the day just chatting and talking about whatever. He's like, dude, sign me up. And I didn't realize what a blessing it was going to be to hang out with him on my, the weekend before my birthday, because he had just turned 40 just a few months before that. And when he turned 40, his little brother flew in from San Francisco or wherever. Yeah, San Francisco up to Sacramento and took him to dinner, got him a hotel room, like took him out, took him to get drinks and just whatever, and just paid for everything. Kind of like you're only 40 once kind of thing. And so he was like, in that moment, he's like, well, I can't wait till I can do that for somebody. And he did it for me. So I love that. And, I think that would be something that would, and I could just do it to all my friends. If I had a limitless thing, I would just do it to everybody and just give them some kind of experience. Say, hey, what do you like to do? Okay. Where have you ever wanted to go? And it wouldn't just be just for friends, it'd be people I love, like my family, my extended family, or if anything, if I weren't going to do that, like, live like a king for a day, maybe set them up in a certain way so that they're never have to work a day in their life. I don't know.
What about complete strangers?
Depends. With complete strangers, I feel like I would be open and willing to, buy somebody dinner or something like that, or anything that doesn't put them off. I've been around, I worked on the Strip, so I know a lot of times that there's a lot of people who are homeless that do not want that help, and they're very vehement about not wanting that help. So you have to be careful of that, and you don't want to sour the whole encounter, and you don't want to sit there and feel like, well, why did I even do that? Like, some people just don't want to be helped, but I would be, open and feeling somebody out for that, to see if that's something they would even want, and help them out a little bit, feed them, get them set up, get them on their way. If they're living on the street, if I had that kind of money, buy them a car. It doesn't have to be a car that, is the top of the line. You can
Maybe
get
a van.
Yeah, get them a van.
Something they could put a mattress in.
Get a van, something. Yeah, exactly. Something they can live out. I'm not going to buy them a Corolla where they can just, get cramped up all night sleeping in the back seat. Yeah, get them something that's more practical. A minivan, town and country, Pacifica basically kind of thing. Yeah, I could see something like that.
I listen to Ari Shafir's You Be Trippin'.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who he is?
I've heard the name.
He's a comedian who is a big fan of freedom in every aspect. He put a special out, and he had a show on, I want to say it was Netflix, and a different company offered to take, he had a show on Comedy Central. Netflix offered to buy his special. Comedy Central said no. So when he took the Netflix deal, Comedy Central said, you can't take that deal or we're going to cancel your show. So he said, okay, fine. And he paid all his staff and he said, goodbye, like, we're done. And it's like, that's the type of freedom that I hope I someday have.
Yeah.
But his podcast right now, like, he's just got done his last comedy show. So now he is disappearing for 2026. He's not doing another thing until 2027. But it's about traveling the off the beaten path style, and he's putting some random person around the world.
That's
like,
awesome.
Just one of the Patreon people are sponsoring it, and somebody else is gonna get to go around the world. And it's like, I love spoiling people.
Yeah.
But it's like, I was just trying to plan a party back east without myself. I've got an idea for a party. All you guys should definitely participate. I won't be there. And it's like, I would love, like, that's one of those things where it's like, if I had a shit ton of money, it's like, I would love to be like, hey, like, I'm going to fly everybody out to, Munich for the weekend. And it's like, great. And then they show up and it's like, where are you? It's like, oh, I wasn't going. Like, no, I'm just trying to give you a good time. Like, I'm busy. I got more money to spend.
Yeah. There's a couple of examples where I sit there and think, what, I would love to do that, because, people like John Candy, when he was filming shows and things like that, there was a lot of people who were, loved to be in Hollywood, do whatever they could be, or do whatever they would do to be part of a production, but we're getting scraps, and we're not really getting all the accommodations. And, and John Candy would go out and pay for all the accommodations, make sure they had their things, make sure if they were working overtime or whatever it was, that they were, given something to make up for the fact that maybe budgets were cut and they couldn't do things like that. And Conan O'Brien's another example. When Conan got the big promotion and the big deal that ended up fizzling out and everything like that, one of the first things he did was made sure that he took care of his writers who basically weren't going to come along with him. They weren't coming around for the ride, or if I'm mixing up the tail end of the story, it might have been when the show got cut, and he still had his money, and then he paid for those guys who basically lost their jobs as a result of this too. So, Conan's one of those people that comes from, recognizes where he comes from, kind of thing, recognizes, I remember when I was struggling, when I was living on, an apartment, living on a couch or whatever, kind of like John Candy, those guys, they realize what it's like to go through the struggle and to really hit it up and be, really make the big time. And I love that they take the time out to think about those people who are trying to get up those rungs of the ladder. Maybe they'll never will, but still have a little bit of a place in their heart for them. So I think of those kinds of things, and I could see myself doing those, if I were having $5,000 a day, figuring out something to do. If I were to see some production and see somebody that basically, like a guy, I lived in Vegas. So CSI, not CSI Miami, CSI, the original, was filmed in Vegas, and they filmed around the corner from my house a lot of times. That was probably one of the main characters, being portrayed. That was supposed to be their house, because they were always filming. They had all these huge trucks on the street, and you're just like, where is all this money? Like just blocking off streets and just having, and me walking by it and seeing these ridiculous $1 million motorhomes that people just kind of spend 5 minutes on, probably don't even appreciate, and live in and out of. So you can see where a lot of money is thrown around. And you sit there and think about some of those people that are on those lower levels and think, oh my gosh, they're not getting anywhere that represents this. All this budget is going to make sure that this guy has more green M&Ms than red M&Ms. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. The economics of non-manufacturing is a lot grayer than manufacturing. You put this screw in that hole, and if you do that, you get paid. But if you just smile and somehow that turns into money, that's like, it's a little more abstract. But it works. Pulls in the views, the newest commodity, people's attention.
Yeah.
But, do you use AI?
I do, actually. I do. Part of my show every day is the AI, the no cap recap, where I will take a quote from a press conference and I'll throw it through the AI slang translator and see what comes out the other end. So I do AI slang. As a writer, I do not want to do AI. It's obviously it's a threat to us in the newspaper industry, especially the purists who try to keep the stories organic. But I do like to use it for my podcast, or not my podcast, my YouTube channel, and just kind of talk in that language, because that kind of stuff wouldn't flow off my tongue normally like that. But AI slang translator helps it.
The I don't know exactly what to call it. The rehab place that's is or isn't, or possibly going in up the street. I couldn't find a contact info other than the LLC listing, so I just wrote a handwritten pen and paper letter to the owner saying, hey, you should come on my podcast. And I signed it as, in a world of AI, be authentic. And I haven't heard back. So deaf ears, or eyes in this case. But yeah. So how did you get into writing?
I guess I've always kind of had a creative bug about me. I was a fan of stand-up comedy. Even as a little kid, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. As an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, when everybody wanted to be a fireman, I was like, I want to be a stand-up comedian. And it's funny because a lot of stand-up comedians that I looked up to, are either dead or I can't stand them anymore, Like I see the kind of... I'll just go right out and say it. I can't stand Whoopi Goldberg. I used to love Whoopi Goldberg. I used to go see her movies. I absolutely detest her. I've met her, and I've said hello to her on an elevator, but I've also seen her in action in life, and I can't believe that I ever wanted to be what she was as a stand-up comedian. She's clearly not. She's not funny anymore. She's way more serious and political, but but yeah, I always thought I was creative in writing. I just kind of went on a tangent there because I just wanted to nail about Whoopi Goldberg but I think over time I'd still write things, and even after I graduated from college, I started writing screenplays, and so I kept wanting to at least write and create. And I realized after a while, even when my screenplays were getting better and better, I found out that like, even if they were to get optioned, they would pay me about what I was making as a valet in Las Vegas. And I was like, well, I already make that kind of money. Why am I going to sit here and keep going down to LA and schlepping myself to these people who are gophers for the production companies who are basically telling you, you're garbage. This is awful. Nobody ever buy this. And I'm like, okay, what are you doing after this? Well, I'm going to go get some bagels and cream cheese for the real people of Hollywood. But yeah, you're garbage. And so I got sick of that. And so I started thinking more about writing books of things I like. And you know, my first published book, The Voices of Baseball, it was only 2 chapters completed, or, you know, 2 rough draft chapters before I even got a book deal. Like, you'd write a whole script and basically throw it at somebody and they'd be like, yeah, go back over it however many times. But I got a book deal having only written 2 chapters of a book because the concept was sound for them and they wanted it. So I just kept with it, with writing, you know, writing books, writing nonfiction, and then eventually I ended up writing for a newspaper as well.
So as a sports fan and a comedy fan, have you listened to Anthony Jeselnik and Greg Rosenthal?
Jeselnik, yes, but not Greg Rosenthal. Or, I mean, I've heard the name, but I don't think I've listened to anything in particular.
They're best friends from their college years. They actually come from Massachusetts. Like, not from Massachusetts, but their formative years, I think, were in Massachusetts. And it's weird whenever they drop local references, and it's like, oh, I know that place. But they had... so Greg Rosenthal works for, I want to say it's just straight the NFL. So they had a podcast together that was supposed to be NFL focused, and Anthony Jeselnik, being who he is, basically walked in there and went, okay, how do I get fired? And so then when that ended, they restarted it under a different network with the same name idea, but inverted. So instead of the Jeselnik and Rosenthal something or other, it was the Rosenthal and Jeselnik, same thing. But they got a podcast series that's gone now, but worth listening to because it's funny and they do talk about sports and stuff. But yeah, they had this song played, if you want to call it a song, that the overhead people were like, don't play that again. So their finale was just that song on repeat, and it's like, yeah, that's the type of attitude I have.
Sounds like Ben Folds from the Ben Folds 5. Don't tell him don't tell him not to do something, because then he'll just really push the envelope and really make the moment uncomfortable. He did that a lot.
Yeah, like I hate telling people no, and I hate it when people tell me no, and that's, you know, part of the problem I get into at work is it's like, to use a poker reference, if you have a royal flush, there's 0 reasons why you shouldn't just go, okay, let's keep going. But if you're not royal flush confident, then you should be sciencing it out, period. So it's like, if I come to you and I say, I have an idea, let's test this, and you say, it's not going to work, no. And it's like, but you have no evidence other than the fact that you're in charge and you get to say no. Like, let me put my foot in my mouth, or let me put your foot in your mouth. But like, thankfully there's this thing called contract. So worst case scenario, I get to go, hey, yeah. I tried to be nice.
And I think that's one thing I need to work on is not treat as if I had been treated in those situations, because, you know, I am no more connected with that with Hollywood than that, or that guy who I would pitch to was no more connected with Hollywood than I was. The only thing was he, had a paycheck through a Hollywood company. Like those kinds of people, that's what I mean. They're it's like the old saying goes, those who don't do teach. There was one of the guys from Sherman Oaks College. I hope he's listening.
Probably not.
Probably not. But one of the first times I pitched, that's all he does is, oh, this will never happen. I'm like, excuse me, sir, who are you? Like, I didn't realize that Harvey Weinstein dressed like you and looked like you. This was back before Harvey got in trouble, folks. Okay.
Right.
bad, I didn't want to say Jerry Bruckheimer or anything like that.
I don't know that name. So
Harvey Weinstein.
I know that one.
Yeah. Jerry Bruckheimer directs or produces doesn't direct them. He's a huge producer and produced all those Pirates movies and things like that. So, Michael Bay, things like that. But yeah, so from all that time, like, who am I to say anything? Just like, who is that person to say anything? And if somebody can, it's from Saving Silverman. He says, if you can dream it, you can do it.
And here we are trying to
That's
dream
right.
it. Trying to dream it.
That's right.
And we're slow rolling on that snowball though. But so you've got your first book and you said you re-releasing another book?
Yeah, my second book's The Voices of Hockey, and that actually just got re-released into Audible. So I've got those two that are published through an actual publisher, and then I self-published a book called Bad and Clean back in 2019.
Is that about steroids?
It is kind of not. It's not really directly about steroids in so much that it's an argument for my favorite player growing up to be, accepted into the Hall of Fame or elected into the Hall of Fame. He didn't get, in his 15 years on the ballot or 10 years on the ballot after his retirement, he never really got the 75% of votes. And now they have these modern era committees. Jeff Kent, formerly of the San Francisco Giants and Los Angeles Dodgers, just got voted into the Hall of Fame via one of those committees. So I was hoping that, and he was on the same ballot this Del Murphy was. And so that was basically I called it Bad and Clean was because around the time that he was playing, a lot of people started using the steroids, but he still had some power numbers. He didn't indulge, and as a result, he didn't really excel the way they did as when it got to the later years of his career. Like he had 2 MVPs, just a stellar baseball player, but didn't cheat, didn't indulge himself, and all those things, and his stats kind of wound down, and it kind of really hurt his chances of going into the Hall of Fame with the way that his career kind of ended up. But he was on a really crappy team most of his career, and of course that's going to hurt your numbers. And like I said, he didn't give in to the temptation that was around there all the time with all the steroids and all the drugs being taken and making the players enhanced and things like that. So that was a way of saying he's bad and clean. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
How do you feel about the modern normalization of, we'll use the word enhancements, steroids, etc.? Like there's the I can't remember what they called it. They're trying to launch a direct competitor to the Olympics that's like juice them all.
That allows them to do it.
Like not allows.
Encourages it and
says
and indulges.
If your doctor says, here's what I'm doing, we're going to say, good, you've got a doctor. Do it.
Right. I don't know. I think it all muddies the waters, really, is what it is. And I've had arguments with people, and they say, Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. And on stats and on paper, I got to say, yes, of course he should be in the Hall of Fame. But as me, being a fan of baseball my whole life, Barry Bonds, had he never even touched a single gram of anabolic steroids, that guy would have moonwalked into the Hall of Fame based on his God-given talent alone. He would have had no problem. He was a surefire Hall of Famer as a Pittsburgh Pirate. Then you see him, and you see the pictures of him as a Pirate. Then you see the pictures of him as he goes along in the Giants, and he starts to really take off, and he starts to really have those hugely productive numbers late in his career and things like that. But to me, he would have been in the Hall of Fame had he not done anything. He wouldn't have had the 760 home runs. He probably wouldn't have had the however many MVPs he won. He wouldn't have had those extremely giant numbers, but he would have been in the Hall of Fame. So my mindset is like, why cheat death? No, cheat death.
Yeah.
Why test fate? You know,
Right.
and the same thing with Roger Clemens. Roger Clemens was my favorite player, and it broke my heart when I found out that he did a little bit of enhancement during some of his years with the Yankees and wouldn't own up to it. And so, as much as I love the guy, I'm fine with him not being in the Hall of Fame, just as fine as I am with Barry Bonds not being in the Hall of Fame.
Speaking of, you just made me think of a question that's going to sound like it's out of, no pun intended, left field.
That's all right.
But the connection is enhancements. If you could have a superpower, you get to pick what it is. What would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good one. My kid asked me that, and I think hers was that she would like to be invisible, or maybe that was my answer, or that she could fly. I would feel like if I could have a superpower, the wrong answer is to be invisible, because then all the people they're like, you're just a creeper. You just want to go into locker rooms. That's not really why. Think of all the things you can do as an invisible person. You can slip in and out of a crowd and not have to deal with uncomfortableness. You can get into movies for free. You can get into any sporting event for free. You can get into any bad team sporting event for free, because probably half the stadium is empty. You just find one of those empty seats. You know, you can't really get away with that in Los Angeles and the Dodger Stadium. You'd be bumping into enough people and really messing with their minds. But that would probably be my choice. Is superpower be invisible. But for all the right purposes and not the all pervy purposes.
As my mom's son, my brain immediately went, and nobody could prove you're not wearing shoes.
That's right.
You'd actually be able to be barefoot. So you'd want to be able to be invisible so that you
I think so.
You could avoid people.
Yeah, I probably would have to have my license taken away from me, because you can't, as an invisible person, you cannot like conduct yourself as you normally were the day before when you were visible, because nobody sees you on the highway. So there's, you can get in a car and everything like that. That's fine. You can spook a lot of people out, but
Just
all the
drive
other
a
things,
Tesla.
drive a Tesla like everybody else. There's probably a million invisible drivers, and all those. I'm from Las Vegas. I worked on the Strip, so all those self-propelling cars, things like that, those are hilarious too. So yeah, I guess that I could still drive and do it, but I couldn't be a pedestrian so much on a busy street and expect that they can see what I'm doing. So,
Well, all superpowers have their drawbacks. Some are more tragic than others. Like, were you an X-Men fan?
oh yeah,
Like Rogue.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt bad for her, but I'm a hugger. So it's like, man, she'd never be able to really hug anyone. But yeah, I've thought about that a lot, and the one that I keep landing on, because it's kind of humorous, but also it's me. It's like, I wish I could just eat anything, because I love food, but I hate spending money on food. And it'd be so nice to just be like, you know what? Today I am going to save money and have grass. But also, maybe I'll go to Chernobyl and just eat that, and then they don't need to worry about fixing the shield.
yeah.
Like that. If that was the thing, I could find out how spicy that is. Are you a spicy food guy?
No, I'm spicier than I used to be, thanks to my wife. I've kind of branched out a little bit. I think the spiciest I've gone pre-marriage was Caribbean jerk Buffalo Wild Wings. That's about as spicy as I went, but I've indulged a little bit more than I used to, for sure.
I went through the age of like, I'm tough. Give me all the spice, but all I learned through that is that, yes, I can handle spice, but I don't want to. Like, the way I describe it is, if you have barbecue wings and then you have a glass of milk, you have barbecue wings and then a glass of milk. But if you have buffalo wings and then a glass of milk, you now have spicy milk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't want the lingeringness of the spice. Like, just enough to say it's there, but it doesn't need to stick around past that. But so, have you thought of any fun questions or things to talk about?
Fun questions. Now, let's see. You lived in Boston.
No.
You lived in Massachusetts, though.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrangle Massachusetts with Boston. Okay.
Everybody does, but that was the other end.
Okay, so if you were to import an accent of anywhere in the country and replace the Bostonian accent with an accent, which do you think would be the most entertaining to walk around the streets in Massachusetts, or in Boston at least, and different parts of New England and Massachusetts? What do you think would be the most hilarious not dialect, but accent among those people?
Like, if you transplant an accent into Boston instead of a lack of an R.
Right.
Maybe like North Dakota.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
With a hint of Canada. That would be fun. But what's a pirate in Boston say?
No. Obviously that's what you think he's gonna say. What does a pirate boss say?
Ah.
Nothing. He says nothing.
He says ah. Yeah. But yeah, that would be fun. But everybody says, "Oh, you're from Boston." No, I'm from the other side.
Yeah.
And like we still have an accent. It's a little different. And when I say we, I mean all of the places in America, which includes Western Massachusetts, that doesn't have an accent still has an accent. Let's see if you have it. Say important. Important. So you
No. Okay, that was. You want me to say it naturally?
Yeah.
Important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's random consonants disappear.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like there's a town next to where I'm from called Holyoke. It's Holyoke, but it's Holyoke. You know, like the L goes away in that case.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to if you keep going west, you hit, you know, Albany, and where they drink their coffee instead of their coffee. But yeah, I had a acting teacher at a community college point that out, and I've never unheard it, but it's fun.
So another question. Let's see, another fun question. If you could basically get in a time machine and for something stupid, like everybody wants to say, I'll get in a time machine and I'll make sure this person was never born or something like that. So this genocide or something didn't happen. That's all fine and dandy. But like, if you were to get in a time machine and you could go back and your specific mission was to make sure a certain person didn't direct a film, what would that be?
A specific person, meaning like, because I'm not good with the names of directors, but basically,
or a certain film could go a certain way, or you could put a certain person in a film.
So change the director of a film,
right? Or the way it went.
That's a tough one, because I don't really think about I never thought about how I could change a film like that. That's an interesting one. I do like watching things, but it tends to be like either I like things or I don't. Oh, easy. I would change The Revenant completely. That was a terrible movie.
Well, which direction would you go with it on it? Because it was insanely intense in a lot of parts, but which way would you change it?
Well, maybe put a Wayne's brother on it.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same direction when I was thinking of this. I'm like, this is just a random question. I was thinking of somebody, like say if Jerry, wasn't a director so much, but if Jerry, Jerry's kids. Why can't I think of Jerry's last name?
Seinfeld?
It's not Jerry Seinfeld, but Lewis and Martin, Jerry Lewis. Duh. Okay. So say if Jerry Lewis directed The Shining instead of Stanley Kubrick. Now I could see a completely different direction, and it would ruin it completely. The Shining is what's funny is Stephen King like hates the movie The Shining, and the book is great, and the movie's great, but I would not have the movie at all be the way the book went. The way that Stanley Kubrick did The Shining was so perfect.
That makes me think I would probably change all of the directors for all of the DC movies.
There you go. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, like
I'm right there with you.
The origin story of the Joker movie was like there was no real progression. Like he took one step in the story. That's it. Just one step. Yeah. As opposed to like, have you ever seen God Bless America?
No.
Do you like scary movies? And by scary, really. I don't mean like gory. I mean like, oh, that could actually happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because God Bless America is basically a dude wakes up because his neighbor's kid is always crying and his neighbor is an asshole and always blocks his car in. And then he gets to work and he gets a phone call from the doctor, diagnosed with brain cancer, gets fired, and he just goes, I know how to fix this. And then he just goes on a rampage but it's like you see the progression of like life sucks, it keeps getting worse now, and then at the end you're like, was that person real or was that in his head? And I like there's actual progression there, as opposed to the Joker where it's like he's crazy and then stuff happens and he's still crazy. It's like there's no progression there. But with The Revenant, my biggest problem was like I think the first thing that stood out was the opening scene. Right off the bat, there's the hunters and they're around a campfire and then they get ambushed by natives. And one is in the tree in the middle of camp. It's like, how did he get in that tree? Yeah. He snuck up right in front of you, not behind you,
right.
Not on the edge of camp, but in the center of camp. He climbed a tree and nobody noticed, and it just goes downhill from there. But
it could be worse if they actually tried to like link that into the dialogue. Because a lot of times, exactly. Well, a lot of times that's what a director will do, or a bad director or a bad writer will do. Was like, it's kind of like the joke they make that it was like just a line of dialogue, and then we change it all up. And when you throw that line of dialogue, it compromises it even more. You're just like, okay, you're just really like doubling down on this. Just let it go.
That makes me think of something, and because you are nonfiction, it may or may not apply. But I'm a big fan of Stephen King and the way that he integrated a lot more than just the Dark Tower into the Dark Tower. And I'm not a fan of Vonnegut because I read one book and then I read something I think it was like On Writing by Vonnegut, and it was the exact opposite. Vonnegut said that if the reader gets to the last page and has any questions left, you've left something out. And I hate that idea. I love going, like in this book, there's this description, and in this book, there's this description, and it's not directly hand in hand, but it's similar enough to where it's like, is that a connection? And I love asking those types of questions.
Yeah.
So with that said, how do you feel about those two opposite ends?
So I'm having a hard time with when you say Vonnegut.
Sirens of Titan.
Okay.
He's a writer, sci-fi guy.
Okay.
But he buttons everything up. Like as he says, when you get to the last page of the book, everything has been answered. Mm-hmm. And Stephen King is like, hey, I'm going to mention this now, and I'm never going to say another thing about it, and it's not even going to be informative.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he is the master storyteller. Like, I'll never tell anybody he's the greatest writer there is, because I would put Thomas Harris in front of Stephen King any day of the week as far as pure writing ability. And then the ultimate writer that I've ever read is Nick Touche. Just an incredible writer. But Stephen King, to be able to write as much as he did, the one thing that I would say, though, is I prefer his writing. I don't prefer his dialogue, but I like how it's kind of like he doesn't lay everything out. A good writer doesn't have to sit there and explain the subtext. That's why we have subtext. You don't have to sit there and explain it out. That's what makes good writing, is subtext that doesn't have to be explained. It doesn't have to be spoken out in dialogue. It doesn't have to have some object on the wall that explains everything. And I think that kind of writing is what I prefer. So I see there's times where I see Stephen King, you threw it together a little too quickly, and you have to sit there and think that when he has a new book out, like almost every year, it's like, okay, did you just phone this in or not? A lot of people don't realize, and in his defense, is he's writing a million books at a time. A lot of times, when I've read enough of his books to see where the timelines, and he says where he started and where he finished it. So you could tell he lost his train of thought and had to go somewhere else. So I think that's another thing. This Vonnegut guy, is he somebody who's written a lot of books? Has he written like volumes and stuff? You know,
Couldn't tell you. Like I said, I read the Sirens of Titan, and then I read that, that observation, and I went, oh, I don't think I'm gonna like any of his books.
Yeah. I don't necessarily, I'm kind of like you though. Like you said, you don't have to have it laid out all the way on the table. I feel like a good writer will let you, be guided, guide yourself through something and not necessarily have to do all the exposition.
Makes me think of one of my favorite shirts I've ever seen. And it said, there's two types of people in the world: those who can extrapolate from incomplete information. And it's like,
and that's it.
I love that shirt. That's great. Because there's going to be the otother type where they're like, what's the other one? It's like, you.
Yeah, right.
You
exactly.
are the other one.
Yeah.
But I wrote the word wish down because you made me think about this. And this is, I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to go into a little explanation of my answer. But if you could, make a wish, just any wish, what would it be?
I hate that question.
All right, I'll let you think about it. I'll say I've thought about that a lot, and I like to think about so many different things: psychology, philosophy, physics. Like I love diving into the things that aren't concrete as much as I do the concrete things. And there's speaking of going back in time and stuff, it's like if there's people who say, well, if you could go back in time, why wouldn't you kill baby Hitler? And it's like, well, one, you could also just try to raise him better. You don't have to kill him, but also, that there's so much in the world that's worth saving, even though that's a giant black eye and it would, it's tragic, but that would not lead to a lot of good things. So it's like, you can't, my brain goes, I wouldn't want to take away the free expression of other people. I won't say free will because I don't believe in it, but the free expression of other people. And one of the things, when it comes to, just giving someone a whole bunch of money, is that it takes away the act of acquiring it. And so my wish that I came up with, if I could wish for anything realistic in an unrealistic question, it would be that on one day every month, no matter who you are, where you are, or when you're participating, you have a great dream and wake up and remember it. I would love to see what that would do to the world, because it's just enough of a nudge. I don't know about you, but when I wake up from a good dream, I'm like, that was awesome. Although I enjoy bad dreams more, but
I think my wish is too vague. That's the whole problem, because a lot of times I look at things on a way more expansive horizon, because I'll sit there and say, yeah, I want my family and I to be completely happy and comfortable. Well, what does that entail? That's the thing that, when I say my prayers, that's one of the first things I pray for. Or when it's 11:11 and 2:22 or 3:33, all those, or my birthday candles, it's what do I wish for? Do I wish to be basically never have to work another day in my life, or or do I go right for the jugular and say, I want my wife and daughter and I to just live in perfect harmony and be completely happy? Well, yeah, but what does that mean? What does that mean outside of that? So I see that my answers can be so vague, but that's what I would want. Whatever leads to that, if it's me being extremely wealthy and we just are grateful for everything and it basically answers all questions and solves all problems, it's not going to solve all the problems, but it'll solve a lot of the financial ones. So like, is that where I'm looking at? Is that the road I'm going with? Is that what's going to be peaceful? Is having financial peace, having a strong, solid health and not having to worry about, health problems? Is that peace? So any other way, like basically all that entails just having a comfortable, peaceful, loving life. There you go. That's my wish. But of course, there's so many roads that lead to that.
Right. Yeah. I may ruin the opportunity, but one thing I noticed in the past when it happened was saying a prayer versus blowing out candles and making a wish versus, like your example, seeing that it's 11:11, they all have at least a little bit of precognition. Like you know that you're going to get to make a birthday wish. You know that you're going to, sit down and say a prayer, but when 11:11 rolls around, you might only have 2 seconds to formulate that wish. But even shorter is like if you see a shooting star and it's like you weren't expecting to see a shooting star. So all of a sudden your heart has a feeling. And it's like, man, that's the most genuine wish because there's no thought involved in it. It's just whatever was right there. Mm-hmm. Kind of like that trick where it's like, do you want Chinese or do you want pizza? Flip a coin before it hit, before it's done flipping, you're going to know which one you're hoping it lands on, and it's like, it's a trick. Another trick, by the way, you've got 2 ladies in your house, so you might need this trick, but instead of asking what food do you want, ask what food do you not want? Do you not want pizza? No, I don't want pizza. Great. We don't have to worry about thinking about it now. Nobody wants pizza today, but yeah, that's a trick I've come up with.
Peas and corn.
Peas and corn.
That'll be the answer. What do I not want? Peas and corn.
Not a corn fan?
No, I like popcorn, but it's the texture thing. I've got ADD, so texture is a huge thing for me.
Okay. The producer doesn't like peas. I kind of miss peas. I didn't like them for the longest time. Then I was an adult, and I was like, okay, they're actually pretty good, but not enough to make a can just for myself, though. But let's see if we're a millionaire, shall we?
Sure.
All right. So, unless you had, there was a pause there, and I was like, oh, speaking of making millions. All right. So, do you ever play Powerball?
Yes, once.
See,
in Vegas, you don't got the Powerball. You have to drive to they don't have lottery in Vegas, in Nevada.
They just have all the other gambling.
Every other gambling you can think of, but you have to drive to the state lines to do lottery.
When I was in Massachusetts on my way out here, I was like, I'm going to be so bored living in this tiny camper. I'm going to figure out how to win Keno. And then I got here and it's like, oh, they don't have Keno here. But all right, so we'll start with the Powerball because that's an easy start. So the Powerball is 23. Do you have a 23?
I do not.
On the last number?
No.
Okay. So in order to win, you can, if you get all 5 numbers of the remaining numbers, you will get $1 million. So we got an 8, a 32, 52, 56, and a 64. Anything?
Just the 32. That's it.
32 is not going to get you any money.
Nope.
Damn. One of these days, I hope to catch somebody winning like 10 grand.
Well, how did these 3 go?
Nothing. Nothing. But that's normal. Do you remember the Apophis comet?
How many years ago was that?
I think it was around December 21st, 2012.
I know. Sorry, random question. I guess I'm just wondering how far back. There was a comet that we went to go see, but I don't think it was that far back. I think it was sooner than 2012.
So, right around the time that the Mayan calendar was going to end, there was also a comet called Apophis that NASA was like, oh, there's a, and they put out a percentage chance like that if our calculations are wrong, it could cause problems. And I remember doing the math because I'm a math guy, and I was like, you've got like a 1 in 1 trillion of winning Powerball. You've got like a 1 in 1 billion of, getting struck by lightning. You've got a 1 in 10,000 chance of getting hit by a bus, but you have a 1 in 100 chance that you get hit by this comet. And it's like, that's puts it in a perspective. But all right, so let's see. Where can we find your book?
The best bet is to go on Amazon, because Audible is got the audio version of it. You can get the old paperback and hardcover book of copies of the Voices of Hockey on Amazon just as well. But if you get the Audible, you get the updated one. Same thing with Apple Books. Not to exclude Apple Books from it. If you want to get the audio edition, go to Audible or Apple Books and find the Voices of Hockey. Broadcasters reflect on the fastest game on earth. Now, Amazon has all of the versions of the Voices of Baseball as well, as including the most updated one. It's the one I recommend to everybody because it's going to be a minute before it's on Audible itself. So,
okay. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, hey, this has been fun.
And that's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote.
I'm not good at the whole intro outro thing. But I'm
That's all she wrote.
Yeah,
Bill Murray.
The show is over and no one is rich. Maybe next time I'll hit real big. I wish you good day. I'll see you next time. Oh!